They say every man has a moment that sets the tone for his life. Mine wasn't a bar fight or some life-or-death adrenaline spike. It was a Tuesday. I was 15, sitting on the back porch with my dad, watching a raccoon wrestle our trash can like it owed him money. He was nursing a cheap beer like it was whiskey, and I had just asked why Mom never came back. He didn't look at me right away, just gave the raccoon a slow nod of approval, like it was making a solid career choice. Then he said, "Son, trust is a funny thing. You only notice it when it's gone, like hot water." That was the start. Then came the part about how Mom had cheated and how trust dies quietly. No gunshots, no explosions, just silence. And from that day, I built my life like it was code, secure, structured, no back doors. Fast forward a decade and a half later, I'm a cybersecurity consultant, the kind of guy who reads terms of service like bedtime stories. I've got a 2-monitor setup, a quiet home office, and a wife who used to believe in volunteering more than sleeping. Her name's Emily, college professor. Woke up early, smiled at strangers, ran charity drives like she was trying to earn karma. Points for the afterlife. I met her 3 years after I dodged a bullet named Jessica Reed in college. A walking perfume ad with a laugh that could end marriages. Jessica was the kind of girl who thought boundaries were cute little fences, meant to be hopped over in heels. I kept my distance, mostly because I like my peace more than I like pretty chaos. Funny thing is, Emily and Jessica turned out to be best friends, which made our dinner parties feel like high-stakes poker games, except instead of chips, I was gambling with sanity. I married Emily because she made me feel like the world wasn't on fire. She asked about my projects, didn't mock my password habits, and always brought home that weird chocolate I liked from the overpriced organic store. We had 2 solid years of bliss, or what passes for bliss when you've got joint taxes, and a golden retriever with chronic gas issues. Then her phone took a swim in the kitchen sink. She said it slipped while she was making a salad. But here's the thing. Emily doesn't cook. She arranges vegetables like she's designing edible architecture. A phone drop during salad art didn't make sense. Still, I ordered her a new one. Upgraded model, overnight shipping. But wouldn't you know it, the delivery got delayed. 2 days, 48 hours where my usually glued-to-her-screen wife walked around like a monk on a silent retreat. And then, right on schedule, her mother got sick. Emily packed up a weekend bag faster than I've ever seen and headed off to take care of her. A few hours later, Jessica shows up, in heels, in broad daylight, wearing a top that looked like it was made from repurposed dental floss and glitter. She brought over some wine and a fake excuse about catching up, but I've watched enough crime procedurals to know when I'm being baited. She sat on my couch like it was a casting. Couch. Kept touching her hair. Laughed at a joke I didn't tell. Said things like, "You've really grown into your confidence," which, let's be honest, no one says unless they're trying to see if your ring comes off. I didn't bite. Politely escorted her to the door and even managed to keep the sarcasm under wraps. But the second that door shut, my brain flipped into hacker mode. That wasn't just Jessica being Jessica. That was a test, a probe, a social engineering attempt, dressed in heels and manipulation, and Emily had to know. I remembered the old digital recorder I used to use for phone interviews. Thing was ancient, needed 4 AA batteries and sounded like it was recorded in a submarine. But we still had a landline, buried in a drawer but technically active. Nobody used it, which made it perfect. I plugged in the recorder, tested the setup, and labeled the tape like I was filing evidence. If she's lying, proof. I didn't confront her. Not yet. That's the part of the story where guys usually blow up, demand answers, and end up looking crazy when it turns out to be a misunderstanding. But I wasn't about to be the emotionally unstable husband yelling over a cheese board. I was going to be the guy who knew before anyone else knew. It wasn't about paranoia. It was about confirmation. And like any good system admin, I believe in backup plans. 2 days later, I told Emily I had to help my dad with his busted shed door. Truth was, the shed door worked just fine, but my dad owed me from back when I helped him erase his weird online dating profile that included a line about enjoying long walks through hardware stores, so I packed a bag, loaded my old truck with fake tools, and kissed Emily goodbye like I didn't have a recording device stashed under the counter. Then, I drove off and waited. Not just for something to happen, but for the kind of truth you can't talk your way out of. I didn't know what I'd hear. But I knew I'd hear something. Because when a woman like Jessica shows up wearing perfume, you can smell through drywall. It's never just about wine. I came back from Dad's place Sunday night. Same truck, same fake wrench in the front seat, same dog hair on my jeans. Emily met me at the door like a Hallmark card. Kiss on the cheek. "How is the shed?" she asked. "Still standing," I said. She laughed like I was adorable, then went back to sautéing something suspiciously healthy. I smiled, kissed her, again, and slipped into the pantry for exactly 10 seconds, just long enough to swap out the recorder. Back in my office, I closed the door and pressed play. I expected nothing. Maybe some grocery calls. Maybe her telling Jessica I left the toilet seat up again. What I got? "Matt almost bought it," Jessica's voice said, sharp and clear, like she was doing a voiceover for a Netflix thriller. I saw it in his face. "I give it till Monday and he'll crack." There was a pause. Then Emily replied, "I just need to be sure. If he ever finds something later, I can pull this out and say, 'You too, remember?'" I need leverage. Leverage. Not love, not honesty. Leverage. I sat there staring at the wall, holding that old recorder like it was a cursed object. I wasn't angry. I was impressed. That kind of mental chess doesn't happen by accident. She wasn't trying to cheat on me, not yet. She was testing my system integrity, like a hacker running penetration tests. If I failed, she'd keep the logs and use them later to justify whatever she wanted. And the kicker? She never thought I'd hear it. I didn't say a word, didn't throw the recorder, didn't pack a bag or sleep on the couch. I played dumb, because that's what smart people do when they're being hunted. Next morning, I dropped a pin-sized mic behind the fruit bowl in the kitchen. Wireless, synced to my laptop. I told Emily I'd be working from home, then, casually, offered to cook dinner, like a man who didn't just find out his wife was one morally gray decision away from a Tinder experiment. Around 2 p.m., Jessica showed up again. No surprise, she doesn't knock. She just appears like a poorly timed memory. "I brought those quinoa cookies you like," she said. Translation: "I'm here to stir the pot." What followed was something straight out of a Mean Girls sequel for adults. Jessica: "So? Did he try anything while you were gone?" Emily: "No. He played it too clean. Now I'm not sure he even thought about it." Jessica: "Or he just knew it was a setup. Come on, Em, don't bail now. You said you wanted to try something different." Emily: I don't know. He's been so sweet lately, like weirdly sweet." Jessica: "Because he thinks he's winning." "You get one shot at this. Dennis is flying in Tuesday. You said yourself he's perfect." Dennis? At first I thought it was a random name, some guy from her yoga group or a barista with a man bun and tragic poetry. But then I heard it again, this time with more venom. Emily: "Dennis is risky." Jessica: "No, Dennis is married. That's not risky. It's secure. He has just as much to lose. That's the point." And that's when it hit me. Dennis was Brandon Reed, Jessica's husband. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the waveform of the recording like it owed me money. Of course it was Brandon. Too charming. Too slick. Too many conversations where his compliments for Emily had this extra glaze, like he was taste-testing someone else's dessert. I always thought it was harmless, the kind of flirty banter you ignore because you don't want to be that guy. But now, it all clicked. Brandon was the backup plan. And my wife, the woman who made me green smoothies and reminded me to stretch after working out, was planning to test drive him while I was out of town at a seminar I hadn't even agreed to attend yet. So I did what any sensible man in my position would do. I made dinner, linguine with shrimp, a bottle of red, candles, the whole Pinterest starter pack. We talked about nothing, laughed. She told me I looked handsomer than usual, like I was a dog that learned a new trick. I thanked her, asked about her mother. She lied with conviction. And I just listened, not to the words, to the tone, the timing, the little pauses she never used to have. She was off balance, and I wanted her to think she was winning. Later that night, we watched a documentary on cults. Ironic, really. She curled up next to me, told me she loved me, and fell asleep like she didn't just get caught plotting a social experiment with real-world consequences. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, one arm around her and one thought, spinning through my mind. This wasn't about sex. It was about power, control, about proving that everyone cheats eventually, so nobody gets to take the moral high ground. It was courtroom strategy disguised as romance. And me? I was the jury. The verdict wasn't in yet. But I already knew what the sentence would be. Most guys would have blown up by now, thrown a blender through the window, yelled something poetic like, "How could you?" and gotten themselves arrested in pajama pants. Not me. That's not how I run my systems. I'm an IT guy. We don't scream. We log. We archive. We build entire frameworks just to catch a single line of code misbehaving. Same with people, especially when the code is your wife, and she's beta testing betrayal on your marriage like it's a weekend side project. So I stayed quiet. I smiled. I made her omelets. I trimmed the hedge in the backyard even though it looked fine to begin with. I downloaded a playlist called Chill Married Vibes and played it in the evenings like I wasn't wiretapping my own kitchen like a rejected Bond villain. And the best part? It worked. Emily relaxed. She started humming again in the mornings, touching my arm when she passed by, leaving notes on the fridge like, "Buy oat milk XOXO, which is relationship speak for, "I think you're still under control." But she forgot something. I'm not the kind of guy who lashes out. I'm the kind of guy who sets traps, checks the logs, and waits for the system to expose itself. So when she mentioned the seminar in San Diego, the one I didn't sign up for, didn't ask about, didn't even know existed, I said exactly what she wanted to hear. "Yeah, sounds good. I'll be gone Friday to Monday." She smiled. "That's perfect. I bet it is. Now, to be clear, I never booked the seminar. I booked a hotel 10 minutes from our house, under the name Ralph Macchio, because if you're going to spy on your marriage, you might as well use the Karate Kid as your alias. Thursday night, I cooked her favorite dinner, steak, medium rare, and that overpriced truffle mac and cheese she acts like she doesn't like because of carbs. We sat at the table, candles lit, music low, everything romantic to the point of cliché. Then right before the toast, I hit play on the Bluetooth speaker hidden behind the bookshelf. Her voice came out first. Crystal clear, calm, confident. I just wanted to know if he'd change, if he'd stop acting like I'm the only one who could ever leave. Then Jessica's voice, slightly slurred from whatever Merlot she'd been chugging that day. "Brandon's ready. All you have to do is send one message." The silence that followed was biblical. Emily froze, fork in midair. Her face didn't crumple. It fractured, like glass under pressure. Not dramatic, not loud, just broken. I didn't say a word. I took a bite of steak, chewed slowly, and finally said, "So, you wanted data? There it is." She stood up too fast, chair scraping across the floor like a horror movie sound effect. "It's not what you think. That's the line, isn't it?" The official anthem of people caught red-handed with a smoke alarm going off in the background. Then, "Explain it," I said, still chewing. I was never going to go through with it. I needed to know if you'd changed. If you were really who I thought you were." "Right," I said, wiping my mouth. "So instead of talking to me like a normal person, you ran a loyalty test behind my back, like I'm a rescue dog from a sketchy shelter." She crossed her arms. "You don't understand. You're always so calm, so unreadable. I needed to feel like I had control." That was the part that hit. Not the cheating, not the recordings, not Brandon the slick marketing guy being the plan B. No, it was the fact that she needed control over me, that loving me wasn't enough. She had to win something. "You had control," I said. "You had everything, but you gambled it for a theory." She started crying, of course. Not big sobs, just the silent, mascara-less, "I screwed up, but maybe I can rewind this" kind of tears. The kind of crying that tries to make you feel guilty for catching them. "I never touched him," she whispered. "I swear, it never happened." That's the only reason you're still standing in this house, I replied calmly. Then I stood up, walked to the hallway closet, pulled out the spare bedding, and dropped it on the guest room bed. You've got 1 week to find a place. I'll cover the rent for the first month, and I'll even help you move your books. But you're not sleeping in my room. Not anymore. Matt, please. This isn't who I am. That's where you're wrong, I said. This is exactly who you are. You just didn't think I'd see it. She collapsed into the guest room that night. I went back to our bedroom, locked the door, and turned off the lights. No tears, no rage, just silence. The kind of silence you only get when the power finally goes out after hours of flickering. The next morning, she made breakfast, sat across from me in a robe like it was a normal Saturday, tried to talk about the news, the weather, some article she read. I didn't answer, not because I was angry, because there was nothing left to say that would matter. And just when I thought I'd seen the worst of it, the manipulations, the justifications, the mental gymnastics, I got a letter. Not an email, not a text. A physical letter, in a cheap white envelope, with loopy handwriting that looked like it belonged in a yearbook. Jessica. No return address. Just a single paragraph, scrawled on hotel stationery. You're not the first. In college, Emily pulled the same crap on a guy named Travis. She wanted to see if he'd cheat, and when he did, she ghosted him and said he was just like the rest. You're just the first one who figured it out in time. Congrats, detective. No signature. Just a lipstick mark on the corner. Because of course there was. That night I didn't confront Emily. I didn't wave the letter in her face. I made tea, walked outside, sat on the porch in my hoodie, and stared at the dark sky while the neighbor's dog barked at absolutely nothing. And for the first time in weeks, I exhaled. She was gone. Not physically. Not yet. But emotionally? Spiritually? Trust-wise? Gone. And somehow that felt more peaceful than I expected. Not because I won or because I caught her in time, but because I knew. And when you know, you're free. Love isn't some abstract feeling. It's trust with a backbone, a connection that doesn't need constant testing. What we had? That was a lab rat on a wheel running experiments in the dark, and I'm done being someone's experiment. They say people show you who they are when things fall apart. But that's not quite right. People show you who they are before the fall. It's just that you're usually too distracted to notice. Emily spent the next few days walking on eggshells like she was auditioning for a role called Wife Who Made. A mistake but deserves redemption. She cleaned the house, made dinner, even folded my laundry, which was funny considering she hadn't touched a sock in months. I didn't yell, didn't throw guilt. I didn't need to. She was unraveling all by herself. Every time she tried to start a conversation, it was some version of, I was scared. Or, it wasn't about you. Or the classic, I think I sabotaged this because I didn't feel worthy. Therapist-grade buzzwords, recycled from whatever book she was half-reading at the time. What she didn't understand was this. I wasn't waiting for an apology. I wasn't looking for closure. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was done. You don't keep arguing with someone once you've seen how they operate without your eyes on them. You don't negotiate with a person who treats trust like a currency to be spent only when caught. That's not a relationship. That's a hostage situation with nice furniture. By Friday, she hadn't found a place. Of course she hadn't. She was hoping I'd crack, hoping for one emotional slip, a weak moment where I'd say, let's work it out. Instead, I left a printed list of short-term rentals on the kitchen counter with a yellow post-it that said, start here. She cried again that night, tried to crawl into bed. I pointed to the door, didn't even have to speak. She got the message. Saturday morning, she was gone. Took her books, some clothes, the cactus from the windowsill, and the French press we both pretended to love but secretly hated. Left a note on the fridge, a handwritten mess of emotion and self-pity. I'll always love you. I didn't know how to protect it. I stared at the note for about 4 seconds, then used it to wipe a coffee ring off the counter. Trash. The following week was quiet, beautifully, gloriously quiet. Like when a bad storm finally passes and your power comes back on, and you realize the silence was what you missed most. People always ask, don't you miss her? Like grief is some mandatory subscription you can't cancel. And the honest answer? No. I miss the version of her I thought existed. The one who smiled at my nerd jokes, who brought me my favorite overpriced dark chocolate without asking, who watched documentaries with me and acted like she cared. That version never existed. She was a prototype, a polished UI over buggy code. The real Emily was always running scripts in the background, always scanning for vulnerabilities. She needed a man she could test. I needed a woman I could trust. That's not a mismatch. That's a complete system incompatibility. A month later, I got another envelope in the mail. No name. Same lipstick print. Jessica again. Inside was a single photo. Emily and Brandon at some rooftop bar, pretending not to be next to each other, but close enough that it felt like a sequel nobody asked for. On the back, a scribbled line told, "You she had a type. I didn't even flinch. Just tossed it in the shredder with an invoice from Comcast." Same level of importance. It wasn't the betrayal that hurt. It was the calculation behind it. The idea that I could be reduced to a test, a variable, a line of code to be manipulated and then judged. But here's the thing. I'm not a variable. I'm the guy who reads privacy policies for fun, who double encrypts his cloud backups, who once caught a phishing attempt by noticing the font was off by a pixel, and in the end, I treated this marriage like a breached network. I traced the intrusion, collected the data, closed the ports, and pulled the plug. Now, I drink my coffee on the porch. Black. No sugar. I get emails from old friends I didn't realize I missed. I work late without checking in. I play the music I like, loud. I rewatch old shows without someone rolling their eyes because I already know how it ends. And every now and then I'll think about her. Not with sadness, with clarity. Like remembering a puzzle you solved a long time ago. The kind that looked impossible at first, but once you saw the pattern, you couldn't unsee it. She was a puzzle. But I'm not playing games anymore. Love, real love, doesn't need traps, doesn't need setups or secret recordings. It doesn't need leverage. It just is, or it isn't. And if it isn't, you don't fix it. You leave. Because trust is like a password. The moment it's compromised, the whole system is exposed. And no matter how strong your firewall is, if the person inside wants access to hurt you, they'll find a way. So now, I keep things simple. I lock the doors. I trust my instincts. And I don't run beta tests on my heart. Love isn't a science project. It's a risk. But it should never be a setup. And me? I'm free. Finally.